There we go.
There we go. Yes.
Yeah, buddy.
Yeah, buddy.
Who's music?
Yeah, this is Timothy James, y'all. And that is summertime in the country. And as you all know, I am Troy Brown from Big Timber Entertainment and my business partner in Big Timber Entertainment. Here with me is Mark Oliverius. Mark, take it away.
Brother Troy, how are you?
I'm doing great, my brother. Yep, doing great. I've recovered from the country radio seminar, CRS. We did some live videos from the CRS, and we saw some fantastic acts while we were there. We met some great people, some people that are in obviously radio, if it's a country radio music seminar. So if any of you are watching this, end up watching this, I miss you guys. I'm having separation anxiety yet from this. So anyway, Mark, you're recovered from the CRS, I take it?
We've got some stories. I'm recovered, and I wanted to talk about and introduce our awesome guest tonight. He's I met him working when we worked with Ronnie Milsap, a bunch of dates. When I was with Lori Morgan, we were working a bunch of dates with Ronnie Milsap, and this gentleman right here was ripping it to pieces on the guitar. And of course, he handled the tour managing and excellent songwriter, and another gifted Nashville veteran with a lot under his belt. Jamie Brantley, how are you, sir?
I'm doing pretty well, man. I appreciate it. Yeah, getting used to living a life of not being on the road all the time, which is quite an adjustment. You know, Ronnie's gig and a lot of other aspects came to a close like whack. You know, and then like I went from being extraordinarily busy to sitting in my house going, well, you know.
But you're learning piano now, right?
Yeah, I'm trying to do that. And I mean, I write a lot, and I try to write something every day. And the writing has become very improvisational. So piano's good for that, you know, set up a recorder and just click it on and go. And then go back and visit it later. And, you know, sometimes there's nothing of note, and sometimes there's 16 bars of something that's, you know, workable, developable. So that's a fun thing, you know.
Yeah. Jamie, you've written, I don't know how many songs here. I just learned you did a Bruno Mars cut, right?
No, I'm not aware of it.
Sorry. Yeah, you know what? Okay,
right.
so we were talking about, Jamie was talking about Bach two-part inventions because he was working on the piano.
Okay.
And you know, I said, yeah, Bach never had a Bruno Mars cut, but
well, yeah, you know what? Mess that up, but that would have been cool, right? Hey?
And Bach would have appreciated it.
He would have.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
He is funky. People don't realize it, but you get into playing two-part inventions, there's a world of feel in there that you can harvest, you know. So.
And you know, he walked. Go ahead, Troy.
No. I'm sorry. You know, Jamie, a lot of times, and I apologize, my day was packed today, but you know, I try to get to know a little bit where you're from, and then how you go from where you're from to with Ronnie Milsap. So, give us a little background.
All right. Well, I grew up in Georgia and played down there. You know, the typical thing that people of our vintage do, where you play in local bands and club bands and house bands and do all that stuff. And then we had a band. I had a band with my brother, Steve Brantley, who I worked with for years and years and years. Steve was a wonderful bass player. He's passed on. And at one point, after doing all the bands around town, there was a little recording studio over in North Augusta, right in South Carolina. And so I became the staff guitarist there at 19, something like that. And our stock in trade was to do sound-alike recordings, which was common back then. So we would take Frampton Comes Alive and, you know, all those disco Bee Gees songs and all of that stuff from that area.
Staying Alive, yeah.
And all of that stuff, and we'd reproduce it. We'd do as close of a version of it and I was making whatever per week, but I got to go to the studio every single day. And it was like getting paid to learn how to be in the studio, learn what the console was, learn how to record, learn how to organize a session, figure out who needed to play and do all of that stuff. Unfortunately, the guy who was running the studio got a little tired of waiting for us to complete the sound-alike recordings, so he started just copying the records over. I took offense to that for some strange reason, and so I went to work one day, and there was chains on the door and the FBI crime scene, and and I'm going, it wasn't me, man. I'm just the guitar player. So then I got a gig with a band that I've always looked about like this. And I got a gig with this band with hair and all this stuff because their guitar player broke his arm. So we went and did the Chitlin circuit all down through, Florida and Alabama and Mississippi and all that business. And then ended up in Atlanta. So the guy was coming back. My brother Steve was there in Atlanta. And my thought at the time was that, all right, I want to go to Berkeley in Boston and study composition, not guitar, because that's just an endless, you can't, summit that hill. So, but he said, you want to go to Nashville? I'm going to ride to Nashville. And I'm thinking, well, no gig. And here I am. And there he is. So we rode to Nashville, and largely because my brother Steve was a very gregarious, outgoing sort of a personality, we got plugged in very, very quickly to working. We never struggled. We never played, bad club gigs, or I'm not dogging on those people. Anybody that's trying has my vote. So let's just put that. But Steve and I were fortunate, and I was fortunate because Steve was a lot more extrovert than me at the time. And so we hung around and did some things and played some sessions. And there was a place called Combine Music, a publishing house a long time ago. We played a whole bunch of publishing demos down there. And then he made contact with a gentleman who just recently died, David Loggins. Please come to Boston and all of that stuff. So we ended up going on the road with him, and I was playing guitar. My brother played bass, and we did that for a year and a half or 2 years. And then that stopped. And then we got a gig with a recording artist that was newly signed to Warner Brothers at the time, a guy named Gary Morris, and a bunch of songs. I wrote his first #1 song called Baby Bye Bye, and that was surprising.
That's awesome.
That was surprising to me. I'm telling you, Mark. A little
Mark, is this the first? No. Is this first #1 we've had on the show? No disrespect to these to our other guests.
Well, Robert had
Robert
went to
yep.
one. Yeah.
Apologize, Robert, if you watch this. Yep, and I owe you another dinner, brother. So apologize for that.
Chop house.
Yeah. Sorry, Jamie.
No, that's okay. So that we played with Gary for a while, and I think I had 2 or 3 songs cut with him, and only one #1, but it taught me a lot about dealing with publishers and how that stuff works, and all of those basic things. And Gary was a very interesting guy in that he, for most of the time we were with him, his touring band played on his albums, which was very rare at that point. And he was a courageous guy who was willing to go to bat for us. He wanted that sound. So a lot of the records from that era, it's our touring band, supplemented with people like John Jarvis or whoever, or Steel Guy to come in, or that sort of thing. And then that gig came to a close because Gary went to New York to do an opera called La Boheme. No, Les Miserables is what it was. He went up there to do that. Was taking the time off, and I couldn't wait. So started looking around town, and I had known Rob Galbraith, who is one of Ronnie's producers over the years, and ran into him in a bar over there at Douglas Corner. Yeah, you guys are surely familiar with that.
A lot of work can get done in a bar.
Yes, and it is, particularly if you're not drinking. You know what I mean? If you're just hanging out and you got your wits about you, it works a little better. But so he said, hey, Ronnie's making some changes. Are you willing to go audition? Is that something you want to do? And I was going, yeah, sure. So they called on some morning and wanted me over there in an hour and a half. I hadn't, seen any music or anything. I mean, I basically knew that Smoky Mountain Rain goes and all that, but all those songs. So I'm sitting there in this rehearsal and there's the music, and I went for it, and they called back, hey, Ronnie wants you to go on the road and see if he likes what you do live. And okay, sure, and then 2 weeks goes by. Hey, Ronnie wants you to come back and see if he likes what you do live and all that. And so after a while, I got a phone call and they said, well, Ronnie thinks, you're the guy. And so it ended up just being that. And I didn't think like anything. I mean, like I thought my plan for going to Berkeley to study composition, I was figuring, well, I'll go to Nashville and I'll hang around and things dry up, which they do for virtually everybody. I mean, really, it's not slamming anybody. That's just what happened.
Right.
And it never dried up. So I was always thinking, well, I'm going to work for 2 years in Nashville, and then Berkeley will still be there, and I'll go to Berkeley, right? And but no, 30 years later.
When did you join Ronnie?
It was March of 1988, if you can believe that. Yeah. I was with Ronnie for over 30 years, 33, 34 years, something like that.
Adam was in the band. Was Adam there or no? It was
Adam Hampton was there when I got in, a wonderful keyboard player named Shane Hicks.
Yeah.
The bass player was a guy from Augusta, Georgia, where I'm from. Warren Gower was playing bass. He was a wonderful bass player, and so I did that for quite a while. And, I've taken the approach over the years that was sort of like what you guys have done, but if I thought a long time ago that if my only skill was playing the guitar, that I'd be really nervous about things, because there's guitar players that are wonderful everywhere in Nashville. So I was thinking, well, maybe it's smart to have a broader skill set. So, over time, I taught myself how to engineer a little bit and produce and write songs and, become a tour manager or, any of those things, and what the hell? Why not?
We saw Milsap. Go ahead, Troy.
No, sorry about that. I just wanted to go back to the publishing. You mentioned you learned publishing.
I'm no expert, but I've learned.
No. And I don't know that anyone is yet. Quite frankly. Well, there are some people, but you mentioned you learned a lot about publishing. Did you know anything about it, Jamie? Before you came to Nashville, maybe give a little experience with it.
I had a little bit of a sense of what it was about. I remember reading some things about the initial phases of record production and the record industry, where there was at first, the artist didn't have an expectation that they were going to make anything off of the sale of the record. It was a promotional device for them to go out and do concerts, make a film, whatever like that, to be a celebrity and get paid for public appearances. And I think it was Bing Crosby and a couple of other people that came along and said, we would really like to get paid per unit. And then songwriters started getting wise to that and going, we would really kind of like to get paid for, rather than you buy the song for $500 or whatever. Let's think about it incrementally per. At the time, the music industry was a widget-based industry. So it's not anymore. I don't know. You guys tell me, because I've just completed a project. I have zero idea how to monetize the damn thing. But anyway, publishing, is nice equity. You own a piece of the song that you split with the publisher, and they get paid, and the money comes to you if you argue hard enough. So
it's so for our watchers and our listeners, the way the music industry works, and you guys can jump in here, is that there's basically two sides to a song.
Yeah.
There's the songwriter and there's the performer, and the recording artist,
Right.
the performer, right?
Right.
And so there are separate royalties per se for publishing, songwriting, and for recording. Now, if Jamie and Mark, you guys write a song, and Mia Brown or Timothy James records the song, there you're getting some type of royalty as a songwriter and a publisher, and that is a very simplified version of this. And they're right.
Yeah.
And the artist ends up getting I don't want to say performance royalties, but there are performance royalties in there, but that can muddy this up. But they're getting revenue from the sale of the song.
Yeah.
So now
it used to be based on a widget sale, though, right?
Yes.
Per unit of a CD or tape or LP or whatever, you know.
And now we have this nebulous thing of digital music.
Yes.
And
streaming
services, and that has really muddied it up for everyone. It's muddied it up for the songwriter, because I think on a widget sale, if I remember right, the royalty that was like established in 1968 or 1980 something was that the publisher and the songwriter, if they were two different people, it was like 9 cents per widget sale. Jamie, if I don't remember the exact number, but it was
something 9. Like, it's 9 cents a song. That
9 cents a song.
Split 9 and some change. You know, that was split between the publisher and the art and the writer. The writers, if they had a publisher, you got two pies, really. I mean, Jamie, I don't know, how did you like to look at it? A pie?
Yeah.
That was split, or two pies?
A pie, and then it was split, and the publisher got generally half.
Right.
The songwriters negotiated how they wanted to split the other 50%, which, you know, so there's individuals that say, well, I own the publishing on a song. Yeah, you do, but if you're hanging out there by yourself, do you have a way to collect the money? You know, do you have any power to make that happen? I mean, because you could have a minor success on an album and then someone not want to pay you, and then you can bankrupt yourself trying to get the money.
Right.
So it's, you know, but I'm at another place with it. I don't know how it works anymore. I don't know how people get paid other than to go out and play live. Is there any money in streaming?
Nobody. That's the big secret. Nobody really has the blueprint, you know. Everybody's got theories.
It's the Wild West out there, it seems like, you know. And it looks to me like the technology developed faster than any payment legality that was to be overlaid on this technological standard of streaming things. It's like that took off first, and then people were going, well, how do the song, I mean, do we pay these people, you know? And so now there seems to be a catch up for the legality of it, the, you know, checks and balances to get in place. And I think there was a Senator Orrin Hatch that was working on this to try to make it a little bit more equitable for musicians, but then COVID hit and all of that just kind of, you know, got deprioritized. So, I don't know if there's anything in the works in Washington right now that would, you know, help us get paid fairly. But, you know, the streaming income looks like why bother to me?
Yeah,
it does. I mean, it's like, you're going to be one of however many million other people with maybe some excellent music out there. One more of the million screaming for attention, you know, and maybe you guys have a better answer. I don't know what it is. You know.
Jamie, it is so saturated out there with music and talent, though. I mean, there's tremendous talent, but it is so saturated in. We don't want to bore you with this, but we just went through 3 days of listening to digital service providers and in radio. Really, they're competing with each other. I can take for $12.99 a month. I can take any song, play it as many times as I want in my truck. and so terrestrial radio or traditional radio, they're competing with each other, and they're all trying to figure out how they can play along nice. Because one of the things
are they really truly? They're truly trying to do that.
I think the DSPs, digital service providers, are trying to say they're playing nice, but it's all nice. But it's great for a listener and it's great for a fan like myself, quite frankly. Yeah. So so Jamie, when let me lead into this then. When you're writing or performing, what are you thinking about, with fans? You played in front of, I don't know how many fans with Ronnie.
With Ronnie, we did everything from a humble fair to the David Letterman show. So it's like in between.
Does this fan group go through your mind at all while you're out there performing, or even going back to your roots in Georgia when you were performing?
My thing about fans is, I think it's similar to Ronnie's, is that I feel a lot of responsibility to do well for people who have been very supportive of us for a long, long time. And regardless of what my personal life is or what I feel like, or those, I'm not to sound overly mobile, but it is time to do it. This
game time.
It's time to do it, and I feel a real sense of wanting to do really well for the people who have paid to come in and taken their time out and bought records and been supportive. And we all have hopefully this median level of quality that's very serviceable. And then some nights, of course, it's magic time. The artist is on, the room feels great, the band's in, just right there, and you can't screw up. It's like you're writing it. And those moments, I think, are what everybody waits for. That's why we go through all this other work, in the music business, because those moments, whether it's in the studio or you're by yourself writing or you're with a group of people that you're, simpatico with, those moments are about as good as it gets in life for me anyways. It's just good, no one's getting hurt, and it's just this big, powerful, wonderful thing, so
that's the payoff. That's the payoff.
Payoff, man. It is. That's why we sit in woodshed and do all of those things and ride on a bus for 15 hours and all that, and you're tired beyond belief, and you get up on stage and things go, and you're like, whoa. That's good stuff,
Someone told me once, where you're actually earning your money is in the woodshed, traveling. As soon as you walk out the door, that's where you're earning your money. And the stage is it's the game. It's like a football player, right? You're earning your money in that week leading up to Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
It changed a little bit for me the last 2 or 3 years, because the last 15 minutes of the show, I was in tour manager head. So I was going, is the bus driver called? I got to go to the box office after, and it looks like we might be in, getting a bonus, and the room's full. So, I'm doing all of that stuff. So, it was that kind of,
What's the split? What's the split again?
Split? Yeah, right. Yeah. Are you handing me this paper? You want me to believe this? Those things. But, most of those people are right on. So occasionally you'll get a jerk, but mostly it's very easy. But nevertheless, the last part of the show, and I didn't hear some of those songs for years. I'm like playing, going, the bus driver's going to get picked up.
That is funny. I tell you what, I heard Ronnie was telling Troy, my first gig was playing piano for Mickey Gilley in '84. And we came into Tahoe. We followed Milsap into Tahoe, into Harris. And so we'd come in a day early because Gilley had us playing. The crew, anyway, we would fly in a day early. And I saw the show, and it was, so we'd go to that final night of the previous artist, and Ronnie's show was just, it was magnificent. I mean, the band, what, three girls at that point, and were there two other keyboard players beside him, or just one? I don't.
Sometimes he would have a guy out, and I can't remember the guy's name right now, but he would be sort of like a hired gun sort of specialist to come out and do some things. And he ended up writing, I'll think of his name in a minute, but he ended up writing a lot of TV music for like Star Trek, The Next Generation, and things like that. So he was, but I think generally it was Steve McEllier on the piano, on keyboards, and Ronnie, playing of course, the acoustic piano.
Right.
Ronnie in his prime was a incredibly fine, effective piano player.
Oh man,
I didn't understand why sometimes he didn't play on his own records. I mean the guys that he had come in and play, Pig Robbins and then Shane Keister and all these people were incredible. Ronnie also had his own thing that to me was always a wonderful accompaniment to his voice.
Who played "Stranger in My House" on the record?
I'm thinking that's Ronnie on Wurlitzer on that record.
Yeah.
And I think Shane Keister's doing some of the other, keyboardy sounding things. There, but yeah.
Gary Morris. Now, did you know? So you "Wind Beneath My Wings." I mean, one of the biggest songs, in country music.
Right. I
remember meeting Jeff Silbar when I first got to town, and he hadn't written that yet, of course, but boy, that was a big one for Gary, for sure.
What was weird too is that it just shows you how wrong I can be about things. Because, we were getting on a plane, and of course, the currency at the time was our little Sony TCS 310 cassette player,
right?
Built-in microphone, you could catch your little ideas and stuff. So Ronnie hands me this tape and says, here's a song that's been pitched to me. What do you think of it? And it was the demo of "Wind Beneath My Wings." So I'm sitting there on an airplane listening to this thing, and I was going, nah, man, this is just not, I don't see this for anybody. How wrong can a person be? Like, whoops. But so he ended up cutting it, and we played that song 8 million times, of course, but it's quite a beautiful piece of music, really.
Yeah.
And it won the year that year, I think.
What's that?
I think it won Song of the Year.
I believe it did. Yeah. Yeah.
I've got a question for both you fellas. You guys have played with, some of the major acts in music history. And I think, to me, it seems like an artist's career and the life cycle of this, it's almost like a song too, right? The song is introduced, and the popularity of it builds, then it fades, and yet then at some time it comes back again. Maybe you guys can reflect on that, through your careers, the artists that you've worked with, and just fantastic again, artists that you all have worked with. Have you ever reflected on that? How careers and songs kind of are intertwined, right?
Yeah, I think I think every artist wants to have that definitive song, or a collection of definitive songs that can help sustain their career. Hallmark songs like, Gary had "Wind Beneath My Wings," Ronnie had 40 number one hits.
Yeah.
So he had a lot to draw on there. But like from my own perspective of my own career, I've always been interested in doing good work for just as a hired gun guitar player, so that I could sit at home and create my own music, just well outside of the mainstream of what happens in, country music publishing and all that kind of thing. I've lucked up a few times just because I've experimented with writing those kind of things with Gary or David Loggins or whatever. But so I don't really see my situation as an arc. I mean, I had an intent to try to do work of good quality consistently for people I was working with, and then I'd come home and write my songs and record them, and I've got,
Mm-hmm.
but it's just an odd thing. It's like I don't know what to do with them now that I have them. It's off the subject of the arc of the career, but it's, I love the kind of stuff that I write. It's I'm a '70s kid, so I come from the world of Stevie Wonder and Todd Rundgren and Steely Dan and Earth, Wind and Fire, and people with feel but changes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's the kind of world I kind of live in. Lots of vocals and that sort of stuff. So yeah, but I understand what you're saying about that. I don't think there's any entertainer that has not gotten to a precipice of their career and then had a slide and then maybe come back up. Some of them just fall off and you don't hear anything anymore. But there was a guy that came out and wrote Ronnie's autobiography. He was traveling with us for a while on the bus, and he's done a lot of writing for a lot of entertainers, and said no matter how high you get, it's a short drop to the bottom. Which I thought was a cautionary tale. Don't get too attached. Be a human no matter where you are in your career. That's, you don't know the next day, and so
yeah.
Go ahead, Mark.
I was just going to say, whoever you pass going on the way up, you're potentially going to pass them on the way back down. So I mean, yes, you have to treat everybody with that respect and
time, man. That's important, I think.
Yeah, I've got an old business mentor that told me one time, anything that goes up like a rocket can come down like a rock.
Right. Well, one of my major motivations for doing all of the music business stuff is that I never wanted an actual job. I really didn't. I never wanted to go to a work. I never wanted to go to an office or a building or any of the work. Like, all right, you're gonna come in here, you're gonna stay for 8 hours. I'm going, no, I'm not.
Yeah.
That's not gonna happen. So the upside of being a musician, in the music business or whatever, is that you have a lot of freedom. Like, I work for a while. If I get tired or to a stopping point, I go take a walk. No one says anything. I mean, even being a tour manager, as long as I got the work done, nobody knew where I was. It's a laptop and a cell phone, and you just do your thing. And but the bad side of it is that for everybody in the entertainment industry, whether it's a musician, actor, publisher, record company executive, or whatever, we all deal with that stress of the next day may be unemployment. I mean, that is, and if you got into the music business with an actual rational view of what you were getting yourself into, most people just wouldn't do it, because it's a fool's errand. I mean, but again, I think we put up with all of this because of those peak moments, we were discussing earlier. And it happens. That's available for everybody, which is the beautiful thing about it to me,
Right. I mean, that's it. The peak moments. I mean, the stage is where it all rubber hits the road, however you want to call it.
And I've been to some writers' nights around Nashville too, where you're sitting there and there's, this 5 stools or whatever across there. And then they go and say, that's a good song. And whatever. That's nice, And then there's one person just shuts the room down.
Yeah.
And then it's just magic time for everybody. It's like, I love that, man. That's such a beautiful thing.
Yeah. Well, Jamie, one of the things that, is coming to mind too, is that yourself, any artist, you're really in business for yourself. You're a sole proprietor.
Yeah.
And it seems like you've been able to invent yourself in many ways as a performer on stage, as a songwriter, tour manager, sometimes they all go together too, right? You know,
True.
you're all in one,
Right.
but
I'd get home and I'd have little production projects to do while
yeah,
I'm down, and then advance gigs in the morning, and then leave on Thursday. To come
yeah. Multiple streams of income. That's what I write about. I on our website sometimes is, you know, trying to give advice to young artists, particularly, is have multiple streams of income.
Yeah.
And so anyway, maybe you can elaborate on that a little bit more.
On the multiple streams of income?
Yeah, in the music industry.
I'm driven by, I want to get paid for what I do, but I'm driven more by just the idea that I find a lot of satisfaction in taking something on and then trying to do it as well as I can bring it forward, you know. And that's my motivation, you know, and I do want to get paid, but it's not, I don't sit around thinking so much of income streams as much as I think in terms of, if I'm doing something that I really love to do and trying to do it, bringing my best self into it, sometimes I have this faith that money is going to follow that in some way. And I've got a weird expression that I use that, you know, things tend to work out in unexpected positive ways. You can't necessarily see it, but maybe this sounds too woo-woo for you, but I truly do believe this. You bring yourself into it, and somehow money starts showing up, you know. But having that single focus of I'm going to go get money, that brings anxiety to me personally. I know it works for some people. I think there are people in the world that are as good at money as Mozart was with music.
Yeah.
I'm not one of those people. You know? I'm basically responsible and accurate with it, but I'm not particularly creative with it. You know?
Well, it's like skill sets. I mean, to me, I view it as, I love to work. I love to work, and I love to work in music. And so my thought was always develop and create more work for guys. That's why, you know, I got into production because, you know, instead of trying to break as a session player and working that end of it along with the road, to me, it was, I'd rather bring artists to the table and bring the session players in and build this community. And I mean, there's so many, you come to Nashville, I don't know about you, Jamie, but well, I bet we're on the same page on that. You come to this town and you see just the best in the world at everything. And so
the best in the world. Yes.
The best in the world. So
you come to Nashville as a guitar player, and then you realize, well, I was in my hometown, and it was my intent in my hometown to be like as good as anybody in my town.
Yeah.
So I would practice and learn records and all that kind of stuff. And then I did okay. Sure, I can play. And then I get to Nashville and I go, my peer group now is Larry Carlton, you know,
right,
and Jerry Reed, you know, and
Reed.
God, you know, all these people, and you just and my friend Kerry West, who was our sound man for you, he had an expression that, you know, people come to Nashville and they're generally like the best in their hometown or whatever, you know, so they come here and they go, I might be able to do some good stuff in Nashville, make a living, be part of the community or whatever. And it's true for little people that, you know, want to be recording artists. So everybody in their hometown thought that they were really pretty and good and all that stuff, and they come here. And Carrie's expression was that everybody gets their spanking.
Yeah.
Everybody has the day where you're the weak guy on the session. Yeah. You know, you're sitting there and, you know, you do what you do, and the producer goes, well, why don't you sit out for a minute, you know? And the people that can survive the spanking, you know, whether you take a song in and the publisher vomits or whatever.
Right.
You know, it's like you got to keep going. Well, I've got a good one in back of this that I can hand this guy one day, you know. But some people can't endure the spanking, so they end up going home, which is fine. You know, go home, have a wonderful life, love your family, and do all of those things, you know. But yeah, I was just, you know, belligerent and stubborn enough to.
You got to have a short memory.
Yeah,
you got to have a short memory
and just keep plowing,
Yeah.
keep doing things, you know.
You're the cornerback, right? You know, you when you're playing cornerback in the NFL, one-on-one, you're going to give up.
Yeah.
Some catches, you're going to give up touchdowns.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how many times you get knocked down. It's all
Yeah.
about getting up again, isn't it,
It
fellas?
is.
That's awesome.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Nashville's a weird place too, because you know, one of the energy of the expectations of the executive aspect of it, whether it's executive producers or, you know, any of that stuff. I found myself in a position for a while where I was trying too hard to adapt my playing style to what I imagined their expectations were.
Yeah.
Like the tones I would choose and the phrasing that I would add to a recording or something. And it got a lot better for me because I was getting really unhappy with my playing. It's like I came from R&B and funk. I mean, I
Yeah.
played a lot of sessions with James Brown in Georgia, you know, so I came from a R&B kind of Steely Dan and all of those things I mentioned. And I saw a television special on Showtime during that period, and it was called, I think it was called Chet Atkins Certified Guitar Player, right? So they were doing little bumpers to promote it in between, and so, you know, there he was going to talk about his special, and it was in the form of an interview. This lady was asking him, well, what advice would you give to somebody trying to get going in the music business, you know, trying to make a success of yourself? And so I'm sitting there going, well, here's a guy who's had a worldwide, you know, guitar career, solo guitar career, been a producer of everybody imaginable, who's run RCA Records, you know, so you might want to listen with this instead of this. You know? So he starts talking, and I'm expecting things like know your market, you know, all of that junk. He says, follow your instincts, belligerently follow your instincts, what you are, what you authentically bring to things. Everybody that's come down the pike that's moved the ball have been people that are so outside of the mark. People like Elvis and the Beatles and, you know, Little Richard and Ray Charles. I mean, all of these people that have just been, you know, people go, what? You know, but so he said, play, you know, in essence, he was saying, place a bet on your own authenticity, you know, place a bet on that. And I was thinking, well, I can live with that. Maybe I can get rid of this lack of comfort I'm having by trying to adapt to what I imagine other people want me to do. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, absolutely. Bet on yourself.
Yeah, bet on that.
It does, you know, and it's a lot of it, because when we saw it, we would see it in the labels. The labels are chasing every other label that's got a hit act. This label wants to copy it, you know.
Right.
So you've got all these
part two, you know,
right.
You know,
I was in Shoney. Remember that Shoney's on Demumbrian? And I was in there once after a session, and Chet was in there with Mark Knopfler. And I had met Chet a couple of times, and what a gentleman. And we were just, you know, I just was briefly talking because he had cut one of my buddy's songs, and I just said hi to him, and at his booth, he and Mark sitting there at the booth, you know, and something, because I think I'd just been let go of something out of something. And
right.
He said, Mark, he said, I've been fired 30 times.
Oh,
You're not getting anywhere unless you're getting fired for a while, you know, something to that effect. And it was like, Chet Atkins said that to me, I'm good to go,
yeah.
you know.
But it's so demoralizing when you get those experiences where somebody goes, you're really not the guy, you know, maybe you should go do something else, you know. But it's interesting to hear that he's had those same kind of experiences.
Yeah.
You know,
That's crazy.
Yeah.
30 times. And I mean, it's about that. And another time, another situation, I walked into a Studio 19. I was starting to bring projects in and work there. And back in the days, and I heard this piano player warming up, and I'll keep his name silent, but he's one of the best in the world. And it was like, how can I compete against this guy? But it's not about that, because when you hear hit records, they're not playing a million miles an hour. It's all about the groove, man. It's all about the groove, right?
I mean, it's something like, how monumentally great is BB King? It's like, that's just the history of music right there. I mean, it's hearing him play the blues, particularly in his prime and in the 60s, was just like mind blowing. But as good as he is, you wouldn't put him on a bluegrass session.
Right.
He's the wrong guy, you know? And so it seems to me that thing that Chet Atkins was talking about being authentic, I think it offers an opportunity for you to be cast because of what you individually bring to it, like a movie. You know, your style, your sensibility becomes valuable to that process. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's very, very, very right on the money. I think that applies across anything in life, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Lately,
did you guys know that Slash actually, from Guns N' Roses, he actually sat in with Poison.
No way.
And yeah, he sat in with Poison, and they told him he wasn't the guy. They bring in a guy, CC DeVille. Yep. And if you think about that,
which is a better match, by the way,
much better match. You know,
he's punk and roughed up, and you know,
it was perfect. And these things, what you guys are describing, they work out, right? You know, and don't get destroyed if someone tells you you're not the guy.
Right.
Your style may fit. It's the same thing in business, you know, and I've had it, you know, maybe this isn't for you, but with what you want to do, this could be for you. You know, I'm thinking about forestry. So Jamie, forgive me, I'm in the lumber business too.
Yeah.
And there are so many different jobs in forestry that, you know, not everyone can be a procurement forester. You know, you might end up being you know, GIS specialist and things like that. And I love this because, you know, what you guys go through, and I apologize to listeners that want to hear stories about Jamie and Mark and everything, but, you know, really this is a business. And when you start fitting the pieces of the puzzle together, magical things happen.
They do.
They do. So anyway, that's I'm done talking. You guys just
Troy,
talk the rest of the show. And
Troy, you got a long history, man. You're very, I mean, we could do an hour on you and your CV,
but,
you know,
like you guys, I can't tell all the stories.
Right. You know, I live up in Ohio about half the time now. My girlfriend lives up there, so I'm between Ohio and here. Instead of not being on the road, I can, you know, just kind of hang out and do my work. I've got a recording situation set up, but also just discovered a studio up there that's a really beautiful sounding studio run by a guy named Ron Flack. It's called Real Gray Studios. It's not a pitch, I'm just telling you. And this studio was designed by a guy here in Nashville named Carl Tatz, the studio designer. Beautiful sounding room, but I've been getting involved with that community. And the reason I bring it up is because they have songwriters nights often there. And it's called Bring Your Song. So they have all of these people that show up. You just sign a little piece of paper, you get up there and you play one song. And it's an interesting perspective to hear because as much as I love Nashville, sometimes when I go out to songwriting nights, there's an element of strategy in the writing of the song. It's like, well, I'm going to write this because I think if I do it in a certain way, it can be whatever, you know. published or cut by somebody. Nothing wrong with that. But it's also interesting to hear these songwriters that approach it from just a purist standpoint. They just write because they want to write.
Yeah.
You know, and some of it is like, well, you know, there's a lot of work craft-wise that perhaps would be appropriate for that song. Like, you know, you get to that 2.5 minute mark, it doesn't need to go on for another 3 minutes, you know.
Close it up.
You've told
That's what they told Dylan, though.
Yeah, right. That's true. Yeah. But I'm gonna get some involvement with these folks up there. And,
cool.
Ray and those guys.
That's awesome.
Beautiful, just wonderful people. And so I'll be doing whatever with them, producing or, you know.
Where in Ohio?
Well, Aaron and I live in a little place called Hartville Village. It's like 6,000 people, man. It's just farms and little neighborhoods, and you know, and it's halfway between Akron up here and Canton down there. And then, you know,
in that country, yeah,
soybeans and cows and stuff.
Yeah.
So it's very quiet. It's a real different, very different vibe from Nashville. Yeah, I guess at some point, you know, I'll be living up there full time, but I'm not ready to, you know, as cynical as I can be about the hard business of Nashville. And as much as I encourage people to be willing to be just purely creative for its own sake, I love this town. I love Nashville, and I love the music community here. I've just met innumerable extraordinarily talented people, and to be part of that to me is just very enriching. You know, it's a great thing. I don't know where else. I mean, if you think about being serious about being in the music industry, you really only have Nashville, Los Angeles, New York to some extent, and maybe some things in Las Vegas. But if I had to choose between that constellation, Nashville is, you know, far up the ladder for me. So,
well, and you had the honor of working with Marty McKeever for years, right?
Marty is one of the greatest people ever.
That's he's a gem.
You know what? He's also an incredibly talented
keyboard player. I know it.
Great. I don't know if he thinks that, but I mean, he is. He could do whatever he set out to do. You know, I think he was signed to Warner Brothers in the 80s and was with I can't think of the guy's name, which I'm embarrassed about, but they spent a lot of time in Holland and had a following in Europe and stuff like that. I think it was a sort of 80s pop Christian vibe that he had going on with that band, you know.
Did you ever, what about Jimmy Hall, working with Jimmy?
What happened there was David Loggins' gig finished and I was just hanging around, and I had auditioned for them prior to that, prior to playing with David Loggins, and I didn't get the gig. You know, it's just one of those things. Well, that wasn't my day, so I had one of those. You're not the guy,
right?
You know? So, but later on, we were playing at the old Exit Inn with Loggins, you know, and Larry Burwell, I think, was the other guitar player, and he came to the Loggins show and said, "Hey, do you want to, you know, come do this?" And so I played that gig when Dave's gig stopped, and it didn't go on for long. It was a tour that was Jimmy Hall and the Charlie Daniels Band, and for a lot of the gigs, it was also Bonnie Raitt, which was just, oh my God,
that's so strong.
Oh my God, to watch Bonnie Raitt do her thing and just, I mean, it was like otherworldly, you know. She was just beautiful.
Was it, she had, what did she didn't have anything out then? Or
she was not, that was prior to that album of Time that brought her sort of back, you know. Yeah, she was a bluesy, badass, you know, slide guitar player, singer person up there, you know, doing things like Angel from Montgomery and you know, that stuff, and just murdering, man, you know. And Charlie's band was really great.
Oh man,
but they were on it, man. And,
Taz was a good buddy of mine, you know, and Larry and the boys. I mean, we worked with them a bunch, and Yeah, Charlie, talk about the publishing and everything, Troy. You know, Charlie. Now this is coming, you know, Taz, we had a lot of talks about this. And of course, Taz is a great piano player, been with him, well, until he tragically died a few years back. But 72, he started with Charlie, and they stayed in the studio and they'd write the stuff, or Charlie would spread the publishing around just so guys could have a vested piece of the action, you know.
Someone would bring in an idea and they would all sort of develop it in
a
whole thing, and then they'd all take a little portion. Huh?
Right. Which was brilliant. I mean, which was keep it in the band, keep the band a true band, really.
Right, yeah. That's kind of how, well, not from the splitting the publishing part, but that's kind of how Gary Morris approached it too, is he wanted that band vibe to happen a lot, you know, in the studio and otherwise. So,
who was in the band at that point besides you?
In
Gary's band?
Well, it was my brother Steve on the bass, a guy named Gary Hooker playing the guitar, and Scotty Saunders played keyboard.
Scotty.
Yeah, you know Scotty.
Wait, now played keyboards?
Yeah.
I'm thinking of the Scotty Saunders, the steel player.
No, that's a Scotty Saunders keyboard.
Okay, yeah.
Wonderful player, and which was almost the same rhythm section that was with Loggins, by the way. We just sort of ran it over, man. But it was and
really, with Jimmy, were you doing Wet Willie stuff?
Yeah, we did, you know, Keep on Smiling and those kind of things. But he had a number of solo projects at that point, so we were doing some of those things. Mm-hmm. I don't remember a lot of those songs. Let me put it to you this way, from a point of humility, I wasn't proper casting for that gig. You know, I did, you know, I played well, whatever the hell that means. But Jimmy's vibe is that somewhere between R&B and gospel and you know, gritty blues and funk and all of that stuff. And I was hanging with it, but I think somebody else as a guitar player would have been a better match for what he was doing. Jimmy's phenomenal. I mean, he's just a force of nature up there on stage, you know. So I was one of those guys that, you know, stood and played, you know, and the rest of the band was like, wow, you know, running. And shortly into that situation, you know, the tour manager or whoever the hell it was came up and said, "You don't move around a lot up there, does he?" I said, "No, I generally just, you know, scowl and play the guitar." And, you know, but he said, "Well, you're going to need to." So they drew this thing, this like collection of arrows, you know, to the front of the stage with a little X. So when it was time to take a solo, I'd walk up there and needly diddly, and then go back, you know. And but then they go, "Well, he's not smiling enough," or whatever the hell that was. So they would put the most. It didn't happen every night, but some nights I'd look down and there would be the most salacious material. I'll just put it that way. And just, whoa, you know, is that legal in this state? Oh man, and it would make me laugh, you know, and kind of energize it a little bit. But yeah,
wow.
Yeah.
Jamie, I have one last question for you. And before that, I do have to tell you a little story, because I know that the three of us could keep this thing going for 3 hours. And Mark and I were doing a interview. We were being interviewed, and it wasn't live, but the first question, and we were 20 minutes in just on the first question. And the guy says, the interviewer, he says, "Hey, fellas, we're going to have to start again. This is only a half-hour show." That's a true story, right?
That is a true story.
And actually, Mark, I heard we ended up with some pretty good ratings on that.
That's great, man.
Yeah,
they better have us back, Troy.
Yeah. So Jamie, my last question is that we do have some young artists and that do watch or listen as this moves on, because we post this on YouTube and we put it in podcast form too. But what advice would you give to a young artist that wants to pursue the music business to make a living?
The music business to make a living.
Yes.
I would recommend against it.
Yeah.
I don't think that I think it reminds me of a joke that, you know, the songwriter, Randy Newman.
Oh, yeah.
He was a wonderful songwriter.
Short People is one of my favorite songs of all time.
That whole
Brilliant.
Yeah. But he had an expression that said, these days, trying to break into the music business is like trying to break into a bank that's already been robbed. You know, and I don't want to sound cynical, because I'm a real advocate of people pursuing their creative life, you know, and my personal bias is, which of course is debatable, but my personal bias is that if you write and record in your best authentic self, just do what moves you. Yeah. Do what moves you. Think of just that, you know.
Yeah.
I think that has a tendency to have a better potential for bringing all sorts of different kinds of success to you, you know. I personally can't advise anybody about the music business, because anymore, frankly, I don't know what it is. I don't know what the music business is. It used to be a widget-based sales business, and then you went out and played shows. I think playing live is still viable for enjoying playing live. I don't know whether you can monetize it enough to predicate security for your life with it. Yeah. I mean, we all get old. We're going to need to retire. We need a house. We need health insurance. We need all of those things. I'm not sure the music business is positioned to, in its current form, is positioned so that people can have any sort of reliable path in that regard. And again, that has nothing to do with discouraging anyone from living a creative life. If that's what you want to do, write incredible songs, you know, learn your instrument, dig deep, you know, learn the history of music and, you know, all of the things that inspired you to want to do it, and dig deep and get into that stuff, you know. But I just, the music industry is just in such a strange place. And again, you could probably educate me, but I don't know how to monetize it anymore. You know, I don't. I do things. I do production things for people. I charge my rate for that. I get a little bit of money. I don't know what they're going to do with the material after it leaves the studio. Mm-hmm. If we mix it very carefully, by my eye standards, it sounds really good. What happens with it next? I mean, you tell me. I mean, you're the business person. What's the next step?
I think the music industry right now, this is a good cop-out. I think everyone in the music industry is trying to figure that out. It's moving so fast.
Right.
And we've got AI now. And there's and everything is, this is when you talk about authenticity, that's what the music business in my mind is. It's a bunch of just very brilliant minds that are creating just beautiful things for people like me to listen to. Mm-hmm. And where it positions itself, I think everyone, it's so vast now. Yes. You've got the digital. You do have classic vinyl people. I've got a vinyl collection, and I still buy vinyl.
But from an individual artist, is that enough so that they can support a life?
What you're exactly right, Jamie. And when you said that, it hit me right in the forehead. And I like that. You know, I've been hit in the forehead many times. and haven't always liked it, but your comment to me, if you're looking to actually make a living in this business, pursue something else.
Yeah,
it's because then it really hit my heart. stay authentic to yourself, stay true to yourself.
I think that's where it's going to, I really think that my own little adage that I believe in is in that things work out in unexpected ways that are positive. I think that if you get a population of people that are writing from their best self as well as they can, interacting with other people who are doing a similar thing, I think that it may not happen in 5 years. It may take a while, but I think there'll be a resurgence of something that's going to be new and great. And there's going to be someone who breaks through that's going to be, oh, that's the new paradigm. That's the new thing, But right now, I tell you what I am encouraged about. And I don't know whether these folks are able to monetize what they do, but I can find people on YouTube that are just people in a room playing what the hell they want to play. It's a band, they set up, it sounds nice, they live stream it, and it's incredible, really good, inventive, authentic music.
Yeah.
And they're just doing it. I love that, man.
Yeah.
That's wonderful stuff,
Yeah.
So I don't. I mean, maybe at some point, and I would love to be really very wrong about discouraging people to get involved in professional music business oriented activity. But there's a number of factors. I mean, the number of people that are trying to do it is just so exponentially larger than it was when I came to town here. It's like everybody from their towns comes to Nashville and wants to have, the win the lottery. And most people are going to get their spanking and go home, and hopefully when they go home, they'll be surrounded by love and light and people that honor them and value them, regardless of what happened here, And hopefully people can carry that in them, regardless of what happened here, But still, I mean, I think, Mark, you probably share this, music for its own sake is one of the best things ever. It's just, I don't know how to get better than that as expression of humanity. I mean, again, in my little world, learning my little Bach 2-part inventions, I'm communing with a guy from the 18th, and this is his genius that I can experience in my hands here, or to hear a Beatles record that's just transcendent, it's those things are still valuable. I just don't know if you can monetize.
Well, that's the answer. I think that's the answer. And Troy and I talk about it. We've talked this thing, and we both are, and are set that it's the stage. That's where it happens. And if you create something on stage that is unforgettable, and that takes people on a journey from up to down, to just emotionally take them on that journey and leave it on that stage, leave it all on that stage. And so they go, wow, I want to be a part of this. I want to be a fan. I want to be interacting with this team and come back to,
There are people that have done that. I mean, that an example, of course, is Dave Matthews Band.
Yeah.
Those guys have never had any radio airplay that I'm aware of, the Grateful Dead. They were able to go out and simply do what the hell they wanted to do. And they were able to build a huge community of people that wanted to just be together while the Grateful Dead was up there doing what they were doing. Is it my cup of tea? Not all the time, but they're doing their thing, I mean, Jimmy Buffett, what did he have? Like 2 songs? Cheeseburger in Paradise and, Stepped on a Flip-Flop and all that. Well, great song, right? But he had like 2 radio hits and was able to build an empire, of a community and people that wanted to take part. And, I don't know. So I think
Yeah.
your take on it is to get up there and do what it is you do, and on your own terms, and attract the people that are going to vibe with that.
Right.
There's a great young artist out there, Cody Jenks, and Cody he fills the place up. He's got a following, and he's the biggest independent artist that's out there right now. And I love his model. I really do. And he's not gonna. He's authentic. He's doesn't go to radio. He doesn't go to, he does sell streams and everything, but man, that guy's got a following. I remember George Thorogood too.
Yeah.
George Thorogood put on a fantastic show and a following. You'd see the same people at a George Thorogood show anywhere here in Wisconsin. Mm-hmm. And George said, if I can get 3 hit songs, I can make a living than being on stage, because there are some people that are going to come to hear my 3 hit songs. Yeah. But everyone else in that audience came to see George Thorogood live. Yeah. And so, you guys are just, Jamie, thanks so much for coming on the show. We have to do this again, because I think we can talk about these things and so much more in this business of music. And I really appreciate you coming on the show. Jamie, Mark is wearing some Big Timber merch right there. Here, I got to put him on the big screen here. So
there you go.
We do this manually. Yeah. And I'll tell you what, brother, as a guest, you do get a Big Timber t-shirt.
There's that, Jamie. There's that, baby.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. So, in here, send me, I'll send you a text.
So here's my address.
Right. Yeah. We don't need to advertise that, but yeah, just let me know what your address is, shirt size that you want. And then, that's what we have to offer. That's how we monetize our guests on this show, my brother.
I enjoyed talking with both of you guys. Thank you.
So, okay, y'all, any parting comments?
I have one. I stole this mug. I just want to let you know, if you want to send the cops. Ronnie's last show was at the Bridgestone Arena down, and I had busted my ass for 6 months helping to put that gig together. And I got the end of the night, and it's like the last Milsap show, and everybody's packing up. And I went in the dressing room, and catering had this, and I went, "This is mine.
That's yours."
Call the cops, man.
There, a confession was just made right here.
God, I'm so relieved. It's such a word.
All right. Well, my fellas, brothers, really appreciate you all as always. Appreciate all of our watchers, our listeners, and Mark and I do have some other shows coming up that we're working on. We're not going to promise anything, but we do have some really cool stuff coming up. Just watch for it online, and we'll be back at you. So love you all, and we are going to end this show.
Good night.